Before I get into beginning what God has given me to say, just turn to your neighbor and tell your neighbor, you got to get up and add on the end with grace. Getting up with grace. Understand this as we talk about grace, because see, grace without God, or in fact grace without Jesus, is just good luck or chance. And some of us have spent too much time wasting our time on luck and chance. Because if God and Jesus is not in your plan or your purpose, all you have is luck and chance. So today, if you're tired of chances and you need a sure thing, I just want to encourage somebody today that if you want a sure thing, try Jesus. And Jesus will help you. Jesus will direct you. He will instruct you how to get up with grace. We are all in fact stumbling toward the light with varying degrees of grace at any given moment. That accurately, in fact, in my opinion, that accurately describes life, because that's what life is. We stumble through life, and it's grace that helps us make the way through. We stumble through dark places and stumble through situations where we don't have the direction that we would like to have. We stumble through situations where we don't know how we're going to get out. We stumble, but understand it's grace that while we're stumbling, it stops us from losing our balance. Every time we lean too far to the left, grace pushes us back up. And every time we lean too far to the right, grace it pushes us back up. That's what life is. And somebody here today who's made some bad decisions. Somebody here today who in your best intelligence, you thought about it and chose the best thing that you thought. You still ended up wrong, and you knew that it was not what God wanted for you to do. I want to tell you that you were just stumbling through grace like I stumbled through grace. We stumble through grace. We stumble through this life, but today, I don't want to really talk to the high steppers. I want to talk to some side steppers. I want to talk to some side steppers to talk about getting up with grace, because when you get Jesus on your side, understand, there's some side steppers who sidestep bill collectors. I want to tell you, you can get up with grace. There's some sidesteppers who have sidestepped public opinion. I want to tell you that you can get up with grace. There's some sidesteppers who haven't given their best effort in school. You know you could do better, but you've been sidestepping. I want to tell you now that you can get up with grace. There's some sidesteppers who have possibly sidestepped some verbal altercations. There's some sidesteppers who have been telling part of the truth but not the whole truth. I want to tell you that you can get up through grace. There's some sidesteppers who have sidestepped a difficult conversation. There's some sidesteppers. I want to tell you that you can deal with the difficulties of life when you got the grace of God on your side. There's some sidesteppers. Let me go here for a minute. There's some sidesteppers who have possibly been sidestepping some crazy chick. There's some sidesteppers who have possibly been sidestepping some down low and no good dude. I want to tell you that by the grace of God, you can deal with it, but you got to get up with grace. There's some sidesteppers who have possibly sidestepped the promised promotion. There's some sidesteppers who have sidestepped prayer time for prime time because you wanted to be on the big stage. I want to tell you, you can get up and get back on God's track through grace. You can get up on God's track through grace, because understand this, we're sidesteppers, but understand this, we're all sidesteppers. We're all sidesteppers because the Word of God says that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So you're nothing more than a sidestepper. But can I tell you this? When you get the grace of God on your side, God will take you from being a sidestepper to being a high stepper. What do I mean by being a high stepper? You'll be able to shake the devil off. That's a high stepper. What do I mean you'll be a high stepper? You'll be able to smile through sorrow. That's a high stepper. What do I mean you'll be a high stepper. You'll be one of those that ain't never scared. That's a high stepper. You'll be a high stepper. You'll be one that can get it done and get it done right. That's a high stepper. God will make you a high stepper where you can push through pain and make pain look pretty. God wants to make you a high stepper, but you got to learn how to get up with grace. I understand this. God's grace. God's grace will help you how to get up with grace. Max Lucado about grace says this. He says, grace is the voice that calls us to change and gives us the power to pull it off. Yes. I want to tell you then that's what grace is. Grace is that silent whisper down in your soul. Grace is the thing that calls to you in the middle of the night and tells you that you know what, you can do better. Grace is the thing that tells you that this isn't where you're supposed to be. It's grace that calls to you and gives you the power to change. Yes. I understand this getting up with grace. Somebody say getting up with grace. And see now that I'm looking backward, at 40, I don't get up like I used to. I'm looking backward at 40, and I've always been an early riser. Still am an early riser, but now that I'm 40 plus, looking back at 40, now that I'm looking back at 40, I don't get up like I did when I was 20. I don't get up like I did when I was 20. Because see now, sometimes I put my feet on the edge of the bed rail before I let my feet hit the floor. Sometimes while they're sitting on the edge of the bed rail, I got to rotate my ankles just to tell my body what I'm about to do. See, other times I have to work the stiffness from my knees before standing up and putting weight on my legs. Understand? I don't get up. I don't get up like I used to, but understand this also. See, sometimes I have to catch my balance because one leg is working and the other leg is not. I don't get up. Don't get up like I used to. But see, at 20, I got up with gold, but now I get up with grace. Let me explain God's grace. You see, God's grace is this. It's a beautiful gift working inside an ugly creature. That's all that God's grace is. Because see, if you saw me getting up in the morning from a comfortable bed with a good night's sleep, you would think something is wrong with me. There's a limp in one leg, it looks ugly. Dragging possibly the other leg, it looks ugly. The back bent over halfway to the right and leaning, it looks ugly. Joints actually popping, sounding like Rice Krispies, snap, crackle, and pop. It looks ugly. God's grace is so beautiful, working in an ugly creature. What do I mean is God's gift working in an ugly creature. All of us know how to be ugly. All of us know how to say something at just the right time to just the right person in just the right way, and it's so not ugly. But God's grace works on the inside of you, and God's grace will mute your mouth. God's grace will change your mind. God's grace will steal your heart. God's grace is beautiful, working inside of an ugly creature. God's grace. It's a beautiful gift working inside an ugly creature. And I know it's Easter Sunday. You dressed looking your best, looking better than you looked all year. I know it's Easter Sunday, but understand this, despite what you're wearing, your life, my life has really sometimes been ugly. Well, what do I mean life has sometimes been ugly? Life, not you, but life has sometimes been ugly. Because see, Big Mama and Big Daddy, when they passed, life was ugly. Understand, life has sometimes been ugly because when you called the power company and asked them for just one more day, life was ugly. I understand, life was ugly because see, sometimes it felt better to cuss someone than bless someone. Life was ugly. I understand. Sometimes when your kids or co-workers or somebody let you down, life was ugly. Understand it? When sometimes everything broke down in the house and you had to when life looks ugly, God gives you the grace to grab one spiritual leg behind the other leg. Understand this, when life looks ugly, God gives you the grace that while you're bent over, God gives you grace to help you stand up. Understand this, when God looks up, when life looks ugly, God gives you the grace to get back on balance when nothing is working right in your life. Understand this, when you're living in your spirit, God gives you grace. That's why Paul said, I prayed to the Lord 3 times, but God answered him with one word. That word was grace. And I want you to know that when you got God's grace, you can keep on going. When you got God's grace, you can keep on moving. When you got God's grace, you can have hope when there is no hope. When you got God's grace, you can trust that God's going to deliver you. When you got God's grace, we gotta get up with it. We gotta get up. We gotta get up with grace. We gotta get up. We gotta get up with grace. We gotta get up with grace. Now understand this, the mystery of grace is this. Here's the mystery of grace. The mystery of grace is that it meets us where we are, but it doesn't leave us where it found us. That's beautiful about grace, because understand this, grace, it meets you where you are, but it doesn't leave you where it found you. Understand this about grace, because see, grace does not allow the pain of your past to eliminate the potential of your future. Because see, grace meets you in the midst of the dump. Grace meets you in the midst of your mess. Grace meets you in the midst of the garbage of your life and brings you from garbage to glory. Grace. Understand this in terms of grace. Let me talk about grace in this way. Building project, Habitat for Humanity. Habitat for Humanity building project. It was a building project, Habitat for Humanity. There were volunteers that came to assist in the building of this home, and there was one volunteer who didn't look like the others. It was a building project. There was one volunteer who was pretty unassuming, didn't have any real strength, any real skills. They just had a heart and a desire to be a part of something good. This volunteer was a lady. It was a small lady, small framed lady by the name of Grace. This lady by the name of Grace, she was here on the building project, a home for Habitat for Humanity. There were big burly men carrying planks of wood, and Grace was moving around seemingly in the way. There were all kinds of professionals. There were carpenters, electricians, plumbers, contractors, all these individuals here playing a role, building this home for Habitat for Humanity, and Grace didn't have anything to do. Grace just seemed to be in the way. Grace was in the way. She wanted to contribute to the building, understand Grace. But understand this, she wanted to contribute to the building, but see Grace, a carpenter took some pity on Grace, gave Grace a step ladder, gave Grace a hammer, and gave Grace some nails, and showed Grace how to put together a door casing. Now understand, a door casing, it's not the door, it's just the frame that goes around the door. Grace was putting together this door casing, and for the many days that went on building this home, that's what Grace did. Grace was just working on this door casing. Now others built the house, but understand this, while others built the house, Grace just spent her time on making sure that she had that door casing built right. Now understand this, Grace, the house was built, had a celebration. 1 week after the celebration, a storm came through, destroyed the house.
All right.
Destroyed the house. It was nothing more than a pile of rubble. The house was a pile of rubble. There was nothing more than there was drywall. There was wood. There was shrapnel. There was debris everywhere at the house. And here, all of the volunteers, many of them came back to look at this house that had now been destroyed by a storm.
All right.
And here they are. They're looking at this house now that's been destroyed by the storm. And as they began cleaning up the debris, they began moving drywall and plaster. They began moving bricks and wood. They began moving everything. What they noticed is there was one thing still standing. And that was the door casing that was built by Grace. Can I tell you, that is what the grace of God is? The grace of God stands when nothing else is standing. The grace of God is erect when everything else is falling down. The grace of God, understand, will stand in the midst of storm and the midst of rain. The grace of God will stand when the thunder is rolling and the lightning is flashing. The grace of God will stand when the rain is falling pouring into your life. The grace of God will stay in the midst of a tornado or a hurricane. The grace of God will stay. What we have here, when we look at the text here in Mark 16, what we have here is now we find that the storm has now passed. And everyone's looking at the debris. Everyone's looking at the debris because the disciples here now, they're in the upper room. The disciples here, they're looking, they're weeping, they're mourning over the fact that Christ is no longer with them. The storm has passed, and now God has to come and tell them how to get up with grace. Understand here, everyone's looking at the damage, reflecting upon time that was seemingly wasted. See, they're distraught, but understand this grace. Grace can take the distraught and give them directions. Here they are. They're in despair, but understand, grace can take them from despair to being darkness. Understand, they're depressed, but understand, grace can take them from depression to the light. Understand this, they got to learn how to get up with grace. They got to learn how to get up with grace. So here what we have, the disciples, they're hiding out. They're hiding out in verse 10. They're hiding out in verse 10. And what we have here is Mary Magdalene comes and tells them that Jesus has arisen, and they don't believe it. And then after Mary Magdalene comes and tells them that Jesus is risen and he's alive, as he said, two disciples who were walking possibly the Emmaus Road, it says in the countryside here in the text, they came back, the text in King James says told the residue. The residue is just the rest of the disciples. They came back and told the rest of the disciples, and they still didn't believe it. Now, I understand this, that they didn't believe it. So God has to come. Christ comes and tells them, teaches them how to get up with grace. Now, understand this, what grace is. See, grace is but glory begun, and glory is grace perfected. That's all that it really is. And see, now, understand this, when we begin to look at this text, we find first grace in an unlikely person. It's in verse 9. Grace is in an unlikely person, because when you look at the text in verse 9, what you have is it says that Jesus showed up to Mary Magdalene. Now, Mary Magdalene, it gives you a little bit of Mary Magdalene's story, because it says that she had 7 demons, 7 devils cast out of her. Now, grace shows up first, is what the text says, to an unlikely person. Mary Magdalene came from the city of Magdala, who was on the south side of the Sea of Tiberias. I don't know who are you from the south side, but Mary Magdalene was from the south side of the Sea of Tiberias. And Magdala was a place that was known for prostitution. So here it is, this woman who had 7 devils cast out of her from a hometown known from prostitutes on the south side, and grace shows up to Mary Magdalene. Can I talk in for a minute right there and tell you that God and grace often shows up to unlikely people? God and grace doesn't show up in the palace. God and grace shows up in the pit. Grace shows up to unlikely people. God and grace doesn't show up on the mountain. God and grace is found in the valley. Grace shows up to unlikely people. Mary Magdalene, she's an unlikely person. See, Mary Magdalene, it said she had seven evil spirits cast out of her. Now, I don't know what them 7 evil spirits were, but one could have been lying, could have been cussing, could have been cheating without stealing. She could have been trifling. She may have been willing to do anything for money. She may have had no respect for herself or God. Or in fact, maybe she knew everybody's business and wasn't afraid to tell her. I don't know what her seven evil spirits were, but understand this now. You thought I was talking about Mary, but I was really talking about you.